To do much talking. I want these wonderful ladies to share their stories with you, and I would love for you guys to engage them as much as possible. I'll get things started with a few questions, but I want you guys to really pick them. They have great backgrounds, great stories of faith, great stories of just how God has moved in their journeys. And I hope what was highlighted for me in talking to them, what we highlighted for all of you, is that we just don't know how God's plan is going to work out. But there's much peace and joy when we just let Him be God and trust Him through the process of life. So with that being said, we're going to start at the end with Cathy and then move down to Regina, Deb, and Grace, and they'll each introduce themselves and share a little bit of their background, and then we'll run into some questions. So,
hi everybody. My name is Cathy Williams-Frank, Catherine Williams-Frank professionally. I'm not supposed to do a rundown of my bio, but I have to start there. Went to from Philadelphia, born and raised, actually Hunting Park, Logan area. Went to Temple Law School, and my first job out of Temple was at the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. I can't say that I had any specific calling prior to going to law school. I was actually working at Friendly's restaurant, and I had a degree in Spanish, French, and Russian, and I didn't know what to do, and they were about to make me a manager, and said, okay, grad school or law school. I mean, it was really, there was no moment with God about it. So I went to law school, and when I went to law school, I thought I wanted to be a corporate lawyer. I thought I wanted to make a lot of money, or a tax lawyer, and while I was in law school, O.J. Simpson happened. And that trial, the trial of the century, kind of changed my life, and it made me want to become a prosecutor. I thought he was guilty, and I wanted to be Marcia Clark. And so while I was in law school, I volunteered. I took a leave of absence 1 year I was in law school. I volunteered in the district attorney's office out in Lancaster County. That's where I was living during my leave of absence. And I just loved it. They gave me all of the domestic violence cases, and I only had a year of law school under my belt, so I was supposed to be being supervised. But they just threw me in and gave me cases, and I loved it. And that's kind of, I think, where God began to show me what it was I was supposed to be doing. So fast forward, finished law school, I got a job in the Philadelphia DA's office, and you don't start with sex crimes there, you start doing, robberies and burglaries, and so I did all that and moved up to the family violence and sexual assault unit there, and so I worked there for 3 years, and at my last year in the DA's office, I was married and I was pregnant. And I think that was the point where I first felt the tension between being a mom, a woman, and a professional. So I was pregnant, I was doing back-to-back jury trials, and I just assumed that I would go back to work. Every woman in my family had worked, and my husband's mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was the first person I ever knew who was a stay-at-home mom. But after I had my daughter, I was overwhelmed with the desire to want to be a stay-at-home mom. And I also loved my job. But I resigned from my job, and I stayed home, took my first career break, stayed home about a year and a half, and then struggled with all the things that women struggle with, trying to go back into the workforce. How am I going to explain my year and a half off from work? What are they going to think of me? Am I going to make as much money as other people? Just all of those issues came up. But eventually I had to go back to work at that time. And I got a job with the school district of Philadelphia in their legal department. I worked there for 6 years, loved it, and had 2 more children over that time, the third one being a bit of a surprise, and so then I was faced with my second kind of mommy professional crisis, working full-time and having 3 kids. A surprise third was really, really hard, and I really prayed about what to do. I remember being on maternity leave with my daughter, my third, saying, oh Lord, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I really don't want to do this. I really didn't want to go back to work and put 2 little ones in daycare and, you know, juggle homework with the 3rd one. So anyway, I did a quick job search while I was sitting there really crying out to the Lord, and I saw a posting for a job, and the skill set seemed to match exactly what I did with the school district. I did a lot of, I gave legal advice to the school district, I did a lot of training with the school police, I gave a lot of advice to administrators, school-based administrators, and so anyway, I saw this job posting and got to the bottom of it. It said, this is part-time. Wow. Wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Lord. I'm applying for this job, and 9 months later, I got it. So the job that I'm speaking about is with the Transportation Security Administration. It's under the Department of Homeland Security, and that's where I work now, doing aviation security law. And I work part-time, and I job share with another attorney who had just had her first baby and did not want to go back full-time, so they posted the other half of her job. So God is good. And that is where I am now, 3 years later, almost 4 years now with TSA. I'm still trying to balance, you know, being a mom and having my own life and interest in ministry and church. But God has been good. So I think I have the best of both worlds, working part-time. Is that it? That's it for now. Judy has a lot of questions, but
Sounds pretty good. My name is Regina Guerin. I have been practicing law for 33 years. I was asked to think about how God worked in my choices in life. And I can just say that I was one of 5 children, and faith was the most important thing. God was the most important thing in our family. We were poor, but God was always there, and it was an important part of our life. Daily Mass, Catholic education, and my parents probably are the most important people in my faith life. That as parents, you do lay the groundwork for your children, and I was blessed to have 2 parents that laid the groundwork for me. So that when I went to school, faith was just a part of it. When I was in high school, I was from an Irish Catholic ghetto in the Northeast Philadelphia, and in the early 50s, or late 50s, early 60s, I said to my mother, well, you know, I think I want to go to college, and she said, no, the boys get to go to college. The girls stay home and learn typing and stenog and home ec. And I don't know whether that was a challenge to me or whatever, but I did do typing in the home ec in high school, and got married, had 2 children, and by the time I was 22, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on in the world, I don't know how to think anymore, I'm going to go to college. And thank God for Temple University, and I went 8 years at night at Temple University, had 3 more children, and when I was done there, my husband was a CPA, he was chairman of the accounting department at South, and I thought, what can I do? I actually had accounting background. I don't want to do accounting. And I thought, well, it would fit nice with accounting, and I thought, how about law? So it wasn't inspired. Well, it was inspired. It all comes from God. I thought, oh, okay, I can do that. We can work together. And besides, the lawyers are the bosses. I'm a bossy Irish woman, so why not? So I did 4 more years in law school at Temple, and thank God for that. And I don't remember any of that being a calling. The one thing I do remember is that I didn't see God anywhere in law school. There were no prayer groups. I am just so amazed at all of you young people that faith is a part of your life and your careers. It's very inspiring, and I didn't see it. I didn't see any of that. I do remember when I got out of law school saying, okay, God, I graduated, passed the bar, so what's the plan? And it was never really a strong plan. My husband had his own business and had 5 kids and a husband and a big family, and I thought, you know, I don't have bosses in my life. I'm just going to go do my own thing. And when I first started, I did everything. When I was in my last 2 years of Temple, I worked in the public defender's office. How we all did those programs. They were available 35 years ago. And I also worked in legal aid. So I like those areas of law. I went out on my own. I did every kind of law 30 years ago. And just sort of narrowed it down. And one of the things that, so narrowed it down, and my daughter, who is, she's a lawyer for 20 years now, practices with me, and we do a lot of family law, we do criminal law, you know, states and trusts, things like that. But I was really blessed that I had a friend who came to me one day, and he was a public defender in Montgomery County for about 5 minutes, and he said, I want to hire somebody. And he said, you want to be a public defender? And I said, oh, sure. Never thought about it. And a month later, somebody called me up and said, are you going to be here? You're supposed to be here. So that started my career as a part-time public defender in Montgomery County. So along with my practice, I was a part-time public defender. And that truly was a ministry. Ministering to those who are poor, to those who are broken. And it really was very rewarding, and I really feel that I was called to do that. And I've done it for 20 years, and I just retired from that. But my practice is sort of a one-on-one with people, and I think as lawyers, some people take the corporate route. I took the route of working with individuals because you can make changes in people's lives when you're in family law, criminal law. You know, you really are a ministry to people. And if you think about how many hours you spend working a day, that's a lot of your salvation. So if you're working, you better be doing something that's good, that's going to get you to heaven. And one of my worst days at the public defender's office, I used to say to myself, okay, it's going to get me to heaven. So for me, working with people one-on-one, and I think as a sole practitioner, you can do that. There's so many areas of law, and I remember my mentor saying to me, oh, the sole practitioner will be gone in a few years, and you know, that was 30 years ago. But, you know, people always need lawyers. Family, you know, people in crisis, you know, their kids are having problems, they're in the juvenile system, they're in the dependency system, they're going through divorces, they're going through bankruptcy, all of these things that, you know, you're working one-on-one with people, and you really have an opportunity to minister to them. And I feel like I have been blessed. I always call my law degree a gift from God, and I think that I hoped that I've taken that gift from God and worked toward my salvation. I ended up here at Christian Legal Clinics, which is another gift from God. Got the call from one of my, we do get the calls, we just don't recognize them. This call I got from Dennis, one of our board leaders, and he called me up and he said, do you want to come out to 55th and Market and to our legal clinic? And I thought, oh, this is the call. Let me think about it. But Dennis, I was not going to take no for an answer. And thank God, over 10 years now, and we have three clinics now. And this is some of the most rewarding work that I do, this ministry in Christian legal clinics. That's in law.
My name is Debbie Ortiz-Vasquez, and I also attended law school, both in Chicago and here at Temple. That seems to be a common thing, and didn't pass the bar. And so at that time, it was kind of a moment of huge disappointment, and then wondering, okay, God, like, is this a setup? What is this about? And I was talking with Janine the other day, and just being able to see how, you know,
in hindsight, you look back and it's kind of a bit 2020, and you start seeing how God just puts these looking fragmented at the time pieces together. And I also had a daughter in law school, and then another. Also worked for the Defenders Association at the time, and started thinking, and I guess, I feel like in some ways God gives you, particularly to women, an opportunity of where there's these moments in time, whether it's getting married or having a child or having a second child or what have you, or caring for an ailing parent, where you could take pause and you could take inventory of like, okay, God, like there's a moment of time, I need to go which direction, right? And it was that moment. I had children, I didn't pass the bar, and all these things were happening. And then our church had a kind of a nonprofit thing going on in North Philadelphia, and I kind of took that thing as an executive director. So I entered into the nonprofit world and was able to, do my own thing, which was such a gift at the time. When you have little ones, take them to work, they're in summer camp, I don't have to worry about it. And so I did that for about 12 years. And, IU Community Center across the street was my home for many years. And, the whole, the skill set you get in law school is transferable to so many settings. So, whether it was me sitting down writing a grant, I knew how to write, and do research. So, and run out to the postal service and get it in before midnight, to get the grant. And I guess it also just, when you're in ED of a small nonprofit, you have to get out there and basically persuade someone to invest, right? To give money, to volunteer, whatever it might be. So again, those skills being able to transfer. I was telling Janine, I still battle with the Lord as to, what was that about? What is that about? Do I go back and try to take the bar? But I feel like the Lord is really, I truly believe that nothing's in vain, nothing is wasted. And so being able to have God, show me points in time where, whether it's a skill that you could take somewhere else or, being able to be present for my children. I was able to, homeschool for a period of time because I had to. And if I was in a legal setting, I knew that was going to be impossible. So I think my board allowed me to work, 2 days at IU and 3 days homeschooling, and I really truly believe that was a gift. And so then, I did the thing. I took time off, not knowing, I needed to resign. I didn't know what was next. Presently, I work with St. Gabriel's System with juvenile delinquents, and so I am a bit, I feel like my two worlds came together, the nonprofit world and the legal world. I'm pretty much every day at family court, advocating as a provider, taking care of children who have been adjudicated. So it's an interesting thing how God just kind of weaves things through, and I do believe, God knew something about me too, and there's a certain amount of, what would my world really be like if I was an attorney, right, practicing attorney? And I think that the legal profession, in a lot of ways, it's a place of power. It gives you a certain amount of authority and power, and I think that we have a temptation to be powerful anyway, and the legal thing gives us, it kind of feeds the beast, I think truly in us, and how do you kind of curtail that? And I think the Lord knew something about me, that the beast could get quite big, so let me slow her down a bit, and I think that also was a gift. And I've been able to be with people in the community, working with people who are impoverished, whether it's economics or education, spiritual poverty, and that's been a huge gift to me. And I think, not being boxed in with the legal profession, because I did work at Defenders, and I felt like I wanted to spend time with more people, and they were like, no, you gotta, this is what you need to do for today, you need to move this thing along. I felt like it was an assembly line kind of environment. And I think with, not being boxed into that attorney-client kind of thing has allowed me to do something much broader on a global kind of a scale, macro, which I really have enjoyed over the years. So that's pretty much my story.
Well, my name is Grace Lim-Ayres, and first of all, I want to say that I've been a lawyer for less than a year, so I have a lot to learn from these ladies who are much more experienced, and have followed God's calling in different ways. I graduated from Temple last May, and when I think about what motivated me to go to law school, after my undergrad degree, I worked for a defense contracting company in DC for about 4 years. And I think, well, to back up a little bit, I grew up in a pastor's family. My dad's a pastor, and so I've always had it kind of instilled in me, to make my life about helping others, about doing God's will, and serving others. There was a period of time in college where I kind of, pushed God away, and I wanted to do my own thing. And I think, working, just joining the workforce, it really helped me to realize how much I needed God. That there was so much that I thought I could do on my own. And it probably had a lot to do with the pressures of being a PK. Where people expect that you act and dress and just maintain yourself in a certain way. So college was not the most holiest of days for me. Once I started working in DC, and I think God really began to work on my heart, humbled me, made me realize just how much I needed Him in my life, and I was working in a pretty good job, fairly stable and with a good company, and I just realized I wanted to be doing something that made an impact on people at an individual level, and I didn't really have God in mind so much, but I just knew that I wasn't really satisfied where I was. So I decided to go to law school, and in many ways law school gave me an opportunity to be the Christian that I think I wanted to be earlier in college. Through CLS at Temple, I think God really put me in touch with great Christians, so I started really just growing my faith during law school. Allowed me to get connected with a UDO legal clinic, and meet people like Pete and Ted and other lawyers who just really were inspiring to me as a law student. I think there are probably a lot of you, in my position right now, just a couple years, for me, a couple years ago. And so, I'm starting out, and I'm still asking God, the very big question, where should I go? What would you have me do? Right now, I'm currently clerking for a family law judge in Philadelphia, and I'm enjoying it very much. In my job, I get to see, I help my judge with custody issues, support issues, protection from abuse, so just kind of a range of family law matters. But what strikes me in the past few months that I've been there, I just recently started, is just, family law issues, they come to court because people come from broken families and relationships have deteriorated. So they're asking the court system, they're asking the judge to help them with custody and help them with support. And there's just something so striking about the problems that people have. It doesn't matter where you're from in Philadelphia, how much money you make, where you live. People, it's just brokenness everywhere, and it's just really weighed on my heart, because I just realized, I'm coming to see just how weighty a responsibility it is to be a judge, and in my position, I'm seeing a lot, learning a lot about family law. Part of me also still wants to advocate for clients, for people who are needy. And less fortunate, and so that's where I am right now. And if you have any other questions, please let me know.
Well, I have a question. I was recently talking with a friend who she's an attorney, and her work is becoming very overwhelming for her. She's saved, she loves the Lord, but she finds it difficult to make time for God. As attorneys, as professional women, and as wives and mothers, how do you make time for God, not just in service, but actually in devotion?
I have to do it early in the day. If I don't wake up early and start in prayer, I never get around to it. So my rule is get up and I pray. I take care of my relationship with God. I really always do pray every day for everybody that I meet, for the judges, for my clients. One of my prayers is always to send grace ahead of me, so that when I get there, the room is full of grace.
For me, I would say, there are different seasons, and so it looks different. I think I've learned to see God throughout my day, to be more cognizant and aware. Because I think we go through our day, we walk that same 3 or 4 blocks to work, and we do it back going home, and there's so many glimpses of who He is throughout the day, and if we're just not cognizant or saying, Lord, I want to see you today, and it could be with a kid, it could be in at family court, it could be among my own staff, it could be walking along and seeing a lot of homelessness and saying, God be with this person, and I thank you for the gifts that you've given me. It is very interwoven, so I don't say I have a set devotional time, but I think that I try to, some days you just need to see His presence, and that's my prayer a lot of times.
And I will just chime in and say, I'm still learning. I love to study systems, and so I've tried every kind of system. I've tried it at night because typically I have more energy after the kids go to bed. But I think what I've been finding is that I have to start my day with a devotion, or else it tends not to get done. And really, I think when you start your day, what you're saying is, I can't do life without you, God. I need you. Even if you spend 5 minutes in prayer. And so I realize I can't do life without God, and so I need him. But that being said, it's not perfect. If there are days when it doesn't happen. But yeah, so my advice to her would be to make the time in the AM.
I think one thing, to echo what everyone else has said, one thing that I found helpful actually is during work to throughout the day, just to kind of stop. And for me, I get daily devotionals over email, so I'll just click on that email with the daily devotional and read what it is, or I'll look at my sermon notes, which I also have on my phone, and just stop and be reminded of what the words, what the sermon was. And then I'll stop and pray, just really short, because I've noticed that, I can go days without connecting God to what I'm doing in the workplace. But so much of what we do, God wants to work in us, and God wants us to be aware of the relationships that we have with the people around us so that we can pray for them. Because it's so very easy to get sucked in by the many dramas in the office, or get completely overwhelmed or consumed by whatever you're doing at that time. So just reminding myself, especially during lunchtime when I have a little bit of time, I'm eating, just to read and pray at the same time. I found that's been really helpful.
And you all interact with a very diverse group of people, and probably not an abundance of believers during your work. So what fruit of the Spirit do you think is most necessary for you to display over the course of your workday?
peace, love, free. I work in an environment where the client does not particularly like lawyers. So it is very difficult. There are 3 attorneys there, and we're kind of, he comes to us, and he absolutely has to kind of like hold in his nose. And so it is very challenging. It is very, very challenging. So yeah, I need joy, peace, love. 3 days a week.
When Jaimee asked this question, of course I went on Google this morning, and it's so easy. Martin was the blind 10 years ago. And I thought, okay, fruits of the Holy Spirit. Now, which of these do you know how to have to do every day? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I mean, how do you pick one of them? It's like part of what you need to be every day. If you're dealing with people and you want people to see Christ in you just as well as you're seeing Christ in others. So I mean, I don't know. I think you have to do them all.
I mean, I think probably patience a lot of time. When I'm going over to family court and I know what's there, I do need to pray while I'm walking. Because, there's something in me that stirs up with like wanting to sometimes speak on behalf of that kid because there's nobody speaking on his behalf. And it frustrates the mess out of me. And then I know I'm not the defense attorney, I'm the provider, and I can't, and I have to just sometimes let some things go, I guess, and just be patient that I will see things through. Because you get quite stirred up and emotional about some things, at least for myself.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what fruit of the Spirit is more important than the other, but one thing that I've kind of realized in my current job is that people are really affected by just how you treat them. Like whether you say good morning or whether you say thank you. I'm sensitive to things like that too, and so just realize that just a little conversation, I think, can go a long way in building relationships and starting conversations that allow you to just get to know each other and possibly down the line, share your faith. I work in an office with, I work in an open space with a lot of other secretaries who work for judges. The chambers are all kind of close together. And instead of having my own office with the other law clerks, I sit outside in a space with the secretaries. And so I find I'm involved in a lot of their conversations. And depending on what the topic of the conversation is, I notice it can kind of elevate the mood in the office, or it can kind of get people real sarcastic and snarky about the day. And so, I try and be conscious of the things that I say. I think in the past, I used to not think that these interactions with people were so important. And I just thought, well, if my work is good, my work will speak for itself. But that's not it. It really is about how you interact with people. It's such a crucial part of how people perceive you, whether they want to trust you, give you more work. And so it's, I was praying in the beginning, asking God to improve the relationship I have with the secretary. And God has answered my prayers. It's amazing. Because I guess there's always like a little bit of an adjustment period when a new person comes in. But it's just amazing. I know there are Christians in my in the office space, but it's kind of hard to tell where people are. And so I've been praying a lot about just being able to speak about my faith and just to kind of uplift each other, because I know there are Christians in my office.
I would like to open this up to any questions that you guys may have. don't, I have several more. But I would love to give you guys an opportunity to talk to these young ladies. Back here, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have a question. My aunt is a lawyer, and I should preface that my aunt is not a Christian. And while I was applying to law school, she sat me down, which she never does. She sat me down and told me not to do it because every female that she has stayed in touch with and graduated law school with her either didn't get married or is no longer married. So I wanted an idea of what being a female lawyer has done to your relationships and maybe how God has worked through that. And I did decide to go to law school.
I think my husband is very proud of me. He's still kind of wishing I'd taken, and I'm only joking, but he does from time to time mention that he wishes I had gone the corporate lawyer route so that we could have like a beach house. So, other than, that aside, I don't think it is, I got married right after law school, got engaged while I was a third-year law student, and worked very, very long hours at my first job. Probably 80, 90 hours a week for the first couple years I was in the DA's office. And so we didn't see each other a lot, but he was just starting his career also. He's a teacher, and he worked a lot, but it didn't cause a problem. We were kind of at the same season of life, and we've been married almost 15 years now, 15 years now. And, by the grace of God, we're still hanging in there. That's all I will say. But it has nothing to do with being a lawyer. That's right.
Well, I went when, after we started having children, we were having more, and I was a different era. And in those days, women got married and stayed home with their children, and I did the exact opposite. I had my children, and then I was starting my career, and I wouldn't have made it without my husband. It was, we were a team, and that's what it took. And if I can tell you that he was old-fashioned, what can I say? That was an era. Men didn't cook, men didn't change diapers like they do now. When you're talking about women in the law, and you young ladies are talking about it, the men have changed too. Women can't. I know from my own 5 children and their spouses, it's a team effort when people ask me how my kids are doing or how your marriage is going. And it's all about being together in faith and being a team and working together. And when I was in law school, oh my God, it was awful. And my husband tried to cook. How bad it was. I'm a bad Irish cook. It was even worse. So, it was all of those things. It was very hard, but we were a team and we prayed together, and our faith was an important part of our life. So, there were stresses. There were terrible stresses, but you talked to each other, you worked it out, you prayed about it, which was a blessing. And it doesn't just happen in law; it happens in every part of your life. That's how good Christian couples make it work. They share, they pray, and whatever the problem is, it's not just yours; it's both of you with God. And I don't know how people make it without God. When I said when I was in law school that I didn't see God. I thought I was the only one that believed in God. And when it was time for exams, I would work so hard and I would pray. But I was always so glad when it was the exam because I was walking in and I said, okay, God, I did my part. Now, you help me. I showed up. I put myself in God's hands, but I never understood how these kids seem to be, it was all about them. And it wasn't. I was so
Well, I haven't functioned as an attorney and a mom, but I knew that that route was going to be a struggle. I mean, I'd seen women who were kind of similar to what your aunt was saying. I mean, we're still challenged every day, no matter, you know, as women and parents, we're still challenged. I guess for me was just, you know, just having that ability to take pause when life brought through its thing, you know, being able to say, okay, Lord, this is a crossroad. What am I going to do next? You know, I was telling Janine, you know, there's always a cost, and it's which cost are you willing to absorb? So maybe there were years where I was making like hardly anything, but I was able to be with my children to, you know, now my kids are going off to college, and it's another season for me. So I think just, you know, it's wonderful that you can do that, where you can just kind of take these pauses along the way and figure out, okay, what works for us now in light of the season I'm in. And obviously having a believer as a husband, you know, that's, you know, like what Regina was saying, you need that, because you just need to be able to, you know, there's still stuff out there, still sin, and there's still roles, and there's still like entrenched culture and such, but, you know, just having a conversation. And bottom line, okay, there's all these negotiables, but bottom line, we're both believers, and we need to figure this thing out with God's grace, so.
Well, like I said, I'm starting out, not only in my legal career, but in my marriage. I've been married for just a little over a year. My husband's sitting right there. You know, I would say, I think our marriage is, you know, a lot like, we're a team, and, you know, maybe it's just, you know, a new generation, you know, I think we operate very differently than, well, my parents, and we try and talk things out a lot, and, you know, my husband was also very supportive when I decided, and at the time we were just dating, but I was, you know, looking to go to law school, and he was looking for a new job, and I think God really opened up opportunities for us. We were both working and living in DC at the time when we first met, but he opened up opportunities for us in Philadelphia, you know, law school and his current job, and so I just have to, you know, stop and think and just be so grateful, because none of those things were accidental, and I think as long as you you know, recognize how God continues to lead you every day, and you have that communication with your spouse, if you make it a priority, I'm hoping, you know, in the long run, it will work out. You know, God will bless the marriage, and allow you to overcome any sort of conflict.
So about 7 minutes, but I have a question. So Deb, I think some time ago I saw some notes from a talk you might have given along with Alyssa or something about how you brought up issues of justice as you were raising your children, and I guess that could go a lot of different directions. Maybe justice is investment, maybe inequalities, or how you, I guess, working in this environment. You said you had them around in this neighborhood. How you did that? And I don't have kids, but I'm interested in thinking about those sorts of things now, because I know I grew up in a really sheltered community back in California. And so if you could speak to that, and if anybody else on the panel has any, you know, observations along those lines, that'd be great.
Well, I felt that it was, I don't know, I think as Christians a lot of times we can say, you know, there's this little family right here, and then there's this world out there, and there's a tendency to insulate, right? There's a tendency to want to protect and keep them space. Especially we live in North Philadelphia, you know. I live in Logan, so not far away. But I also felt that, you know, the safest place to be is where God wants you to be. So there's you know, and I think my parents did this with us. I mean, we lived in Barton Village as kids, and they sent us on a trolley I was like probably in first grade. I don't know what they were thinking, but you know, and we had like tokens in our shoes so no one would steal them. And I'm like, Mom, what were you thinking? Of course, there's no cell phones back then. And I guess you just believe in a big God, that God can protect your children as soon as they walk out that door. So it's kind of entrenched in me. And then I being here and the exposure, I felt was so important for my kids to have exposure. So it is to those who come in and have no food, you know, and maybe someone comes in and they got mental health history, you know, and issues. And so not to just like say, well, you're not allowed to be here, but, you know, because it's a bit unsafe. Let's talk about it. And those are those teaching moments that I think we all as parents have to have. You know, my thing was, you know, you see, there's this man in my neighborhood who you could tell has mental health, and he's just sitting in the middle of the street, and he's, you know, sometimes clothed, sometimes, you know, almost not, and he's like a constant. And it was just having that opportunity, you know, that God created him to be so much more, you know, and you wonder what has happened to this guy, and, you know, what God created, you know, in terms of Genesis and what the fall is and what God is doing to redeem, and having those conversations, of course, in very basic language, but you see it. I mean, it's right in front of you. So instead of just trying to protect and not, you know, expose, it was really a push to expose and then have conversations about it. And I think, you know, it did well for me, and my dad used to drag me everywhere. You know, I was in Chicago in front of gang members and, you know, trying to have a powwow to have peace in the neighborhood. And he dragged me along, and I was just there. I mean, it was nothing really spoken to me, but it was just the exposure. And I feel like it's a hard place it's a hard balance to strike, because I think we're, you know, our tendency is, as parenting, and we just want to shelter and we want to protect. And then there's this whole world out there that our kids need to be exposed to, and then how does God speak to that? And they need to learn that. You know, what does God have to say about that? And I think with that exposure, you can have those really fruitful conversations. And you believe in a big God.
Anyone else has another question? I know we're running out of time.
Yeah.
So since we are down to our last 4 minutes, perfect. If each of the ladies could just take a minute to share one piece of advice that they would like to leave with specifically the women in the audience, but if you have anything that you would like to give generally, please do give that. We can start with you.
Piece of advice. I would say get a mentor to the women. Whether you are in law school, I don't know what the situation is with everybody here, whether you're in law school or starting your legal career, or really you're an established attorney. I think a mentor is essential, and even better, a Christian attorney, or not even an attorney, a Christian mentor, even better. I think there have been, God has strategically placed who just really made a difference, and just encouraged me. My supervisor at the DA's office is the one who encouraged me when I was not sure about coming back to work. She said, you know what, it's okay. It's okay to want to be a stay-at-home mom. It's okay. The job will be here, the career will be here. I mean, and I've had these female bosses and mentors in my life that have just been invaluable. So I'd say seek out a mentor in the workplace, the church.
I would say, following up on what Sister Nora said, that as lawyers, and really as people, but as lawyers, we do have a lot of power. We have power to change people's lives. So we have to make sure that we get involved in people's lives, and that when we work, that we see Christ in others. We also have to make sure that they see Christ in us.
I think, you know, just to kind of, maybe sometimes our thinking is, you know, this is what I've been trained to do, this is what I'm supposed to do, this is what God has called me to do. But, you know, sometimes it takes breaking out of that box and saying, Lord, you know, really being open, I think, to what the possibilities are. Because you never know. I mean, he always says, you know, you want to get a laugh, you tell God about your plans, you know. It's really saying, Lord, I'm open. You know, I have those lawyering skills, I have this degree, I have this, whatever it is, a license to practice. and not being afraid to hear what God might have for you as it unfolds. You know, it's a great thing.
My piece of advice, well, for law students I was thinking of in particular, is basically to try many different things. Try different internships, externships. For me, I really think just volunteering, you know, the few times that I volunteered with a UDO legal clinic kind of just opened up a world of possibilities in terms of the things that, you know, I could do as a Christian and as a lawyer, that those two things, you know, were not two completely separate, you know, spheres, but that they could be, you know, done in, you know, one setting. So just to open yourself up to, you know, the possibilities out there, and get involved in legal clinics, it's been really helpful to me.
Well, my advice to all of you is to take a few moments to talk to these ladies individually after this panel is over, before you leave here. Exchange contact information, and definitely pull on them and, you know, continue to keep them in prayer and ask them to continue to keep you in prayer as you go through your journey. They are great resources and great sources of a lot of good wisdom and advice. So thank you, ladies.